Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 20 and 20 Challenge. This is part 18, and today I actually have something a bit special, a bit unplanned, but I spent the last couple days working on trying to get familiar with Hotwire Rails. So today we're going to be taking a look at how to use Hotwire Rails to create a to-do list similar to the to-do list we made in week 15, I believe. So we're just making a very simple to-do application, but today we're going to be creating it using Hotwire Rails. And this is just a really simple way to leverage the power of Action Cable and Turbolinks and all of that, package it together, and provide an alternative to a front-end rendering framework, and instead have the a bulk of the work done on the back end, and then just push those updates as HTML updates through to the front end. So you're going to notice that while we're setting up something similar to Vue, we already have this like WebSocket communicating thing where we have a Redis database running in the background, and we're doing pub subs to it. So if we change something in one browser window, the other one updates. So all of that is kind of also happening here, which of course means that this is going to be a great tool if you're interested in doing, chat rooms or any sort of WebSocket communication. You'll definitely want to check this out. But I'll be curious to know what you guys think of Hotwire. So, if you have any thoughts about it or questions about it, leave them down below, and maybe we can have a discussion about it. But that's going to do it for me. Let's go ahead and let's jump into some code. Okay, so this is the application we're going to be building today, and it's just a very simple to-do list where you can, create a to-do item. So I'll just make an item that's like do video intro, and I'll create the to-do. And you can see that when I create it in one window, the other one is automatically updated because we're running a Redis database, which is used for pub sub, which is publish subscribe. So when you publish to one, the other one is subscribed to it, it gets notified, and then it says, okay, I need to render this. And then if you complete a to-do, you can see it's updating on both screens, and you can do inline edits. So I'll change this to a deleted to do, click update, and then we can hit destroy, and that gets rid of it. Or you can, click update and then hit cancel, and it won't do anything. So this is what we're going to be setting up, and this is all being done with Hotwire. So this is going to be a little bit easier than using Action Cable to set up a system like this, and it's going to largely leverage Action Cable and Stimulus and Turbo. And it kind of, bundles all of that together to make something that is fairly easy to set up, but allows you some pretty neat functionality. But I'm going to go ahead and set all this up and move over to the text editor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add in our Hotwire. So for this, we can, let me just bump up the font size in the terminal. For this, we can do a bundle add Hotwire-Rails. That will add the Hotwire gem and I believe the Stimulus gem. You can see here, Stimulus Reflex or Stimulus Rails, and then Hotwire Rails get added. The other one we want to do is we'll also want to do a Rails Hotwire :install, which will set up Rails or set up Hotwire for us. And you can see here that it adds a couple inserts into the application.html. It does the turbo tags for us, enables Redis in the gem file. So if we come into the gem file, Redis should be enabled. Switches the development, sets up the Redis database, does some of the Stimulus stuff, adds in some JavaScript, some include tags, and all of that other good stuff. So at this point, if we want to run our Redis database, because we technically have two that we have to deal with, you are probably going to have to add Redis manually if you don't already have it. You can do this by running the sudo apt install redis-server command if you're on Linux. And on Windows, I'm assuming you probably just have to go find a Redis installer and set it up. But then you should be able to run Redis-server if you want to just run it in a terminal like this. Or if you want it running in the background, you can do Redis-server space daemonize space yes. And that will just run it in the background. So now it is still running. It's just we can, still use this terminal window. Okay, so that takes care of the Redis setup. Now let's go ahead and let's set up our app. So we're going to do a basic scaffold for this, similar to what we did in, I think, week 15. So we're going to do a Rails G scaffold, to-dos, and we'll give each to-do a title and a completed Boolean. So we can go ahead and run that. And then we can come into our DB migrate and our migrations, and we can just say, let's make this default to, I guess, false is what I had it. So we can do that. Now let's do a Rails DB :migrate command to migrate our database. And then we can do a Rails S command to start our server. So now if we refresh, we'll go back to our default Rails page. And now we can go into config and the routes.rb, and then we'll just say route to the to-dos index path. And then we'll refresh the page and hopefully get sent to our to-dos index page, which it looks like that's what happened. The next thing I'd like to do is we can actually close this. We're going to just quickly generate another controller. So we'll say Rails G controller, and we'll just call this the completed controller. We're just going to generate this because I don't feel like making this controller manually. So this will make a controller file for us here. It'll be called the completed controller. And if we come into our views, you'll see that we do have a completed view folder. We don't actually need this, but you know, you can delete it if you want to. But let's go ahead and let's pop into probably one of our views. So let's go into views, to-dos, and then let's go into our index.html.erb file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get rid of all of this, save it, and I'll do a Rails S to start the server because we shouldn't need to restart the server for this. So this will wipe out our page. I'll just do an H1 that says, this is our Hotwire. Let me bump up the font size. This is a Hotwire to-do list, H1. Save that, refresh again. And then we have a couple tags that we can use here. So the first one you want to know about when you're using Hotwire is the ability to do a turbo_stream_from. And this is just where you're streaming the information from. So how this page, like where this page is getting its information from. So when you saw that hot reloading that was happening, where was it getting that info from? And we're going to say it's getting it from to-dos. We can save that, refresh, nothing will happen. We can then come down here and we can do another ERB tag, and we can say Ruby or turbo_frame_tag. And this will be for our to-do form. Oops. And then we can end this one. And this is where we're going to render this _form.html.erb partial. So we'll just do that real quick. We'll say render form. And then we need to pass it a local. So for this, we'll just pass in our @todo. Now this doesn't exist yet. So when I save this and I refresh, it's going to throw an error. And that's because this @todo is something we haven't created in the controller yet. So if we come into our to-dos controller real quick, our index, we can just say @todo equals todo.new. Save that. And then once that formats, we can refresh, and we now have the ability to create a to-do item from our index path. So let's go back to our index page. After we have the form, we then want to say turbo_frame_tag for to-dos, do. And then in here, we just want to do a render for all of the @todos. Now this is going to work if you have a to-do partial, but of course we don't have a to-do partial. So this is like, what do you want me to render here? Of course it has no idea, but we can very quickly fix that. So let's go ahead and let's make our to-do partial. So we'll create a new file, say _todo.html.erb. And then in here, we can do another turbo frame tag for the DOM ID to do, and then we'll just say end. And the way this works is you're streaming all this info from to-dos, and you have these frame tags. And these frame tags are basically pieces of HTML that it will hot reload. So instead of doing an entire refresh of the page whenever something happens, it's just going to reload whatever's inside of one of these frame tags. So if I hover over this, I grab the body and I expand this a bit, you can see here, this is our cable stream. And you can see right here, we have different frames that appear. So this is our to-dos frame, and this is our form frame. I don't know if this is visible. I might have to scroll in. But basically, whenever something changes, it will grab this frame independent from the rest of the page. So like, let's say you do something to delete the form, it'll just delete the form, but it won't refresh the page. And it does that by just grabbing info from the Redis database, as opposed to the way it works in a normal like JavaScript front-end application where you just have all of that stuff running around in the client side. Okay, but now, so let's very quickly add, let's go to Railsbytes. So we'll go to railsbytes.com. And let's very quickly grab Bootstrap. So we can scroll down, I think, and then grab the Bootstrap gem. We'll copy this to the clipboard. We'll stop our server, and we'll just right-click to paste it and hit enter. And this should add Bootstrap into our application. And we're just doing this because some of the styling I had there did rely on Bootstrap, and it always helps to do stuff like this in the tutorial, just in case this breaks something, so that, you know, I can make sure that when you try to actually use this in the wild, it actually works. But we'll run a Rails S again, come back here, and we'll refresh. And I'll just open up my console and see if it's upset about anything. Doesn't look like it. So let's go ahead and let's try and create a to-dos setup here. So we're going to give each to-do a card. So let's say this has a class of card. End. Oops, not end. /div. I'm in Rails mode right now. Then we want to give the to-do a div with a class equal to card-body. Then we want to say this is a to-do if it's completed. So we'll do, let me full screen this. We're going to do a ternary inside of here, which of course isn't the most readable thing, but this is just very quickly to grab the class for our to-do item. So let me do this. So if to-do is set to completed, then give it the completed class. Otherwise, give it the not completed class. And now we, of course, have to go actually set up this completed class inside of our style sheet. So we'll just remove that. And then in here, we can then close this div. And then we can do a to-do.title to render the title. We'll just do a BR. And then we can do a div with a class equal to, so div class equal to, we had button dash group and then float dash right. And we'll close this div. And then inside of this, we'll have 3 different links. So we do a link to complete. And this is for the update completed path, which is for the controller we made. Now, I don't think we actually made this completed path yet, so just bear with me. And then we give this an ID of to-do.id and a to-do of to-do, and then a class of, I think, button dash, what was it? Button dash secondary, I think is what I had. So we can save that. We can come into here, refresh. Of course, we don't have a to-do yet, so let's just create a to-do. That creates a to-do right here, but of course, nothing refreshes on the page. Now, if we actually refresh, we should get an error for the update completed path. So let's go ahead and define that completed path real quick. So for this, let's come into our config and our routes.rb. And then here, we'll just do a, let's do it above the root. We'll do a get for /completed/:id. And we'll do this to the completed update action. So it's the completed controller, the update action, and we want to do this as update_completed. So we full screen this. This is what the full route looks like. We can move this back over, and we can refresh. So now we have our text is a little gray here. That doesn't look great. So now let's come up here and let's fix this button real quick. So this is going to be inside of app assets style sheets because we generated this scaffold. We are going to want to delete this scaffold.scss, delete that, refresh, and now it looks a little bit better. Let's now very quickly style this to do. And we can just do this by coming in here. And for the completed to do, we just gave this a background color of, RGB, and it was 124, 233, 91. And then we have a dot not completed that is set to background color, RGB 177, 177, 177. Save that, refresh, and now we have a gray to do. So that's great, pun intended. But now if we click on it, it says the action update cannot be found for completed controller. So we want to go set that up real fast. For that we can come into our completed controller. And then here we just want to do a def update. Def update. And then we just need to say at to do equals params.find, to do dot find by the params ID. At to do dot completed equals not at to do dot completed. So we're just inverting that, and then we just do a at to do dot save. So now if we come back and we refresh, we can hit create to do, which will create an empty to do. And then if we click completed on that, it will say the completed controller update action is missing a template for request formats text HTML. So why is it saying that? Well, if we come back to our index page, sorry, not our index page. If we come into our to-do model, we need to set up the ability to actually stream these things. So the way we stream these, well, first thing we'll do is we'll make sure we can't make a empty to-do like that. So we'll say validates the title, the presence of true, and then we'll just go back to localhost port 3000 real quick, and we'll refresh this. So validates the title, presence true. We then also want to do a couple after commits. So with Hotwire, you can say after create commit, or you can say after update commit, or after destroy commit. But for this one, we want to do after update commit. We want to broadcast replace two to-dos. And this is the to-dos we set up earlier that we're streaming from. So when we say stream from to-dos, we're streaming from this thing that's broadcasting to the to-dos. So after we click update, it sends it to the Redis database by broadcasting it to the to-dos list, which we are streaming from in here. And that's how this finds out that it needs to then re-render this turbo frame tag with the at to-dos to update this to-do item. But now if we come in here and we click this, so you can see it's a little bit upset about not having the template still. And as far as I can tell, and this might be a bug or I might be wrong here, but when you try and do requests like this, you need to come into app, JavaScript, and then packs application.js. And I think you need to comment out this import Rails and import Turbolinks and get rid of the Rails.start and the Turbolinks.start because it's using Turbo now, not Turbolinks. And I did find this on a GitHub issue off of the Turbo repository, so I'm assuming that's what you need to do. But now if we hit complete, you can see down here, it just says no content found, which is what we're looking for right now because we don't have everything set up, but I don't expect it to error out when I do something like that. So as long as there's just no content being found here, we should be fine. And you can see here that it is processing this update as a turbo stream, which is good. So why isn't this updating? Well, if we come back to our to-dos, we have this to-do.html.erb. We have this to-do title, which is fine. It's showing off the to-do. But one thing that so it looks like I actually ran into an issue with this gem being a different version than the one I used for the demo application. So we're going to do a little bit of live debugging here. So one thing I'm noticing is I'm going to set up the stream for deletions real quick. So let's full screen this. And below this, after update commit, we're going to say after destroy commit. And it's the same thing. We're just going to broadcast replace to the to-dos. And then up here, we'll also do a after create commit. just so that we already have this, where we broadcast replace, or sorry, where we broadcast prepend to the to-dos. And then down here, this isn't replace, this is remove. There we go. Let's save all of that. We'll refresh. If we click completed, now that's working. I'm not entirely sure why this isn't working, because I just tried this and it wasn't working, and now it suddenly is. So that's a little bit interesting, but it seems like adding in these creates worked, unless there was something else that was wrong. Maybe one of the to-dos that was created wasn't created properly. No, it looks like that. It almost looks like the after update isn't working. So if we comment that out and uncomment this, it looks like you need both the after create commit and the after update commit in order for this to work. But after you have both of those, it seems like it properly broadcasts them. So let's go ahead and let's check and make sure this is actually working inside of a second browser window. So if we click, it looks like this is already broadcasting our updates, so that's great. But let's see how much further we can take this. So we'll uncomment this, we'll move it back to here. And then inside of a second Rails console, we'll just say, or inside of a second terminal, we'll just say Rails C. And let's do @todo equals todo.last. We'll say @todo.title equals temporary title @todo.save, which you can see right here, updated it without needing to refresh. And you can see here it's broadcasting to the to-dos, or to the to-dos Redis turbo stream. So it does all of that, handles all of that. Now let's do a @todo.completed equals true, @todo.save. That works. And now let's try @todo.delete. And you can see here, that one wasn't streamed to the application like we would expect it to, even though we have this after destroy commit. So what's up with that? Well, you'll notice here that I used an interesting choice of words. I said @todo.delete. If I refresh, it was deleted, but because we're only broadcasting after destroy, what we need to do is say todo.last, which will grab this one with the T title, .destroy, and that will actually destroy it. Now, thankfully, the controller already has a destroy call inside of it. So here it's calling @todo.destroy. So we should be fine there as long as we add in a link for that. So let's go do that. We'll come into our views, our to-do, and we'll go into, I guess, our todo.html.erb. Let's full screen this. And let's give this a button to destroy to do, which is our the item we want to destroy. And then we'll say method delete, which is how we tell Rails we want to delete this. And then we'll do a class of button danger, and we'll save that. Let's come over here and refresh. So now we have a destroy button and a complete button. So we can mark this as completed. We can add another one. And then maybe we don't want this another one anymore, so we click destroy and it just deletes it just like that. And if we refresh, it's gone still. So that's good, but one thing you might have noticed there is when I hit enter, or when I created the to-do, the form's not updating. So the next thing we want to look at is how do we make the form update so that it clears itself when we click submit. We could do that by coming into the form real quick, and then after the model to-do, just say comma, ID is equal to the DOM ID of the to-do. We'll save that, refresh, test, create a new one. That's still not being deleted. So why is that still being a problem? Well, it turns out that inside of our to-dos controller, we have to do a little bit of cleanup. So if we scroll up to the top here, and I'll just full screen, we'll just go through this whole controller real quick. The index, show, new, and edit are all fine. But inside of our create, what we want to do is instead of redirecting to the @todo, we want to redirect to the to-dos path. And then we want to say the to-do was successfully created. We then want to make sure that we are in the errors handling the turbo stream. So if we have an error, we want this to say format.turbo_stream. And then we want to say render the turbo stream, which is turbo underscore stream dot replace. Let me bump up the font size one more, just to make sure you guys can see that. And the turbo stream dot replace needs to take in the at to do, and it needs to say partial is the to do's slash form. And then outside of that, we need to say comma, the locals are the to do, which is the at to do. This is just passing in a local variable that this can then use in the form, which of course in the form you can see right here is your to do model. So that takes care of setting up the create action, because that's really all we have to do for the create. Now for the update, it's perfectly fine to leave this redirecting to the at to do, and for the destroy, it is fine to leave this as the to do's URL. So now if we come back here, refresh, we can then say test case, make this a completed one, and you can see it removes the text from the form. Now what happens if I try to create an empty to do? Well, we get one error, prohibited this to do from being saved. Title can't be blank. So then we say this one isn't blank. And then we hit create, and that creates a non-blank to do without the error, and it gets rid of the error. And now we can say, you know, complete this or uncomplete it and then delete it. The last thing I'd like to do though is set up that little edit button. So for this, we need to come into our form, or not our form, we need to come into our to do. We'll just full screen this again. And then in our to do partial, we want to add a third link, or a third button here, which is actually a link. So we'll say link to edit. This will take us to the edit to do path, which takes in a to do. And this is a class of button. I think I said this was button warning, like that. Now we want to come into our edit.html page, and here where we render this form, instead what we want to do is we can say put this in another, you guessed it, turbo frame tag with a DOM ID of at to do. We'll say do, and then we can do the end block down here. We don't need a show button for this, and we don't need a back button for this. We just want to render the form, but then let's wrap this in a div. So for this, what we want to do is we actually want to wrap this in a div that is identical to this one. So if we don't wrap it and we refresh, we hit edit, it just removes that item. So we lose our to do styling. And you can very easily do this by just replicating the CSS that you have inside of your to do. So this whole section right here basically just gets copied in. Let me replace this. It gets copied in, and the interior contents inside of the card body, instead of having the title and this button group, just has the render form call. So you press that. Now when you hit edit, you'll run into an error here. Oops, run into an error here. And that's because we need to replace, we need to replace this. Let me full screen this. We need to replace this to do with an at to do. So it's using the same variable. And if we refresh, we can then hit edit. And this now allows us to edit the to do. Now, of course, one thing you can see here, we can click update and that works. But how do we change this to allow us to cancel out of that? For that, we can quite easily just put in the link. So we'll say link to cancel, and then this will just point back to the at to do. So we'll refresh, we'll hit edit, we'll hit cancel, and there won't be anything here for it to display. And that, of course, is because we need to come into our show page, and we need to give this another turbo stream, or a turbo frame tag. So this needs to be wrapped in its own frame tag, because it needs to know what it's supposed to put here after you hit cancel, because we're just saying go grab the frame tag, the turbo frame tag from the show page. So we'll just quickly say turbo frame tag with a DOM ID of at to do, of course. And then we'll say do, end, And then in here, all we want to do is just render the @to do. So it's just another call to render the partial, basically. So now if we refresh, we click edit, we click cancel, it goes right back. We can click update. We can even uncheck this in here. We can destroy these. We can try to create an empty one. It'll error out. This one will be valid. We'll create it as completed to begin with. And now what we can do is go over to localhost port 3000 over here, and we can do these same tests. So we'll just say 1, 2, 3. We'll make that one completed. 4. Maybe I come over here and I want to delete the ones that aren't completed. And then I want to uncheck this one and create another one that says, ha, got you, and create it like that. And you can see that very quickly you have something that's broadcasting this through the Redis database across the Rails pipeline, and it's all perfectly responsive. Now, of course, if you only have one application for someone, let's say it's all restricted based on user accounts, you're going to have a similar experience to what you would have with like Vue or React, where it just seems like a reactive application, and it's just, you know, sending this over the sockets in the same way that that you would have with like Action Cable, but it's just an experience for the single user that you're sort of mimicking in that way. And this allows you to put the stress on your back end as opposed to your front end. So if the clients have a slower computer, then you don't have to worry about stressing out their experience. You can handle the brunt of that. So that's one of the perks of having Hotwire. But I think that's just about it for this short little to-do list. I'm hoping that in the next video I can set up something a bit more advanced using Hotwire, but I just wanted to get out this basic tutorial because like I don't know what I'm doing with this, so I'm learning as I make this, and this is a good way for me to get up to speed, and then hopefully have you guys come into the next one a bit more familiar with how things work. But let's go ahead and let's cut out to the outro video. Okay, so that's going to do it for this episode of the 20 and 20 challenge. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm curious to know what you guys think of Hotwire now that you've gone through a tutorial on it. Possibly, you know, this is the second or third one you've gone through, but I'll be curious to know what you guys are thinking. So, you know, let me know down in the comments below what you guys think, and maybe we can talk about it. But that's going to do it for me. Hopefully this video helped you. If it did, please remember to like it, subscribe, all that other nonsense the YouTubers are constantly saying. If it didn't help you, remember to dislike it so no one else sees it, because it's a new tool set. And we just don't want to subject people to bad tutorials on it right now. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.